Hello, everyone. Welcome to your channel, where we learn English through real, inspiring stories. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Apple, one of the most innovative companies in the world. You'll discover how two friends, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, started a company in a garage and changed the way we use technology forever. But this isn't just a history lesson. It's a chance for you to practice your English. Listen carefully to the story, and I'll help you with key vocabulary in the description below, in blue on the text. By the end, you'll not only know more about Apple, but you'll also improve your listening and speaking skills. Are you ready? Let's get started. Chapter 1. The Dreamers, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Our story begins in the 1950s, in California, USA. This is where two young boys, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, were born. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco. His biological parents were young and unable to raise him, so he was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a loving couple who lived in a small town called Mountain View. Paul Jobs worked as a machinist and taught Steve how to build things with his hands. Steve was a curious and creative child, but he didn't always fit in at school. He loved electronics and spent hours tinkering with gadgets in his garage. He was also fascinated by calligraphy, a skill he later used to design beautiful fonts for Apple computers. Steve Wozniak, or Woz, was born on August 11, 1950, in San Jose, California. Unlike Jobs, Woz was a quiet and shy boy who loved math and science. His father was an engineer, and he taught Woz about electronics from a young age. Woz was a genius with electronics and could build complex machines even as a teenager. He once built a blue box, a device that allowed people to make free phone calls. Steve Jobs was so impressed by the blue box that he convinced Woz to sell it, and the two became business partners for the first time. In the early 1970s, Jobs and Wozniak started attending meetings of the Homebrew Computer Club, a group of computer enthusiasts who wanted to build their own computers. At the time, computers were huge, expensive machines that only big companies could afford. But Jobs and Wozniak had a dream: to create a computer that was small, affordable, and easy to use. This dream would eventually lead to the creation of Apple. Chapter 2. The Birth of Apple. In 1976, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak founded Apple Computer in Jobs' parents' garage. They started by building the Apple I, a simple computer that was just a circuit board. Wozniak designed the computer, and Jobs handled the business side. They sold the Apple I for $666.66 each, and it was a hit with computer hobbyists. One of their first customers was a local computer store called the Byte Shop, which ordered 50 units. This was a big deal for Jobs and Wozniak, and it gave them the confidence to keep going. But Jobs and Wozniak wanted to do more. In 1977, they introduced the Apple II, the first computer designed for ordinary people. The Apple II had a keyboard, a color screen, and a plastic case, which made it look friendly and approachable. It was also the first computer to use a graphical user interface, which allowed users to interact with the computer using icons and menus instead of typing commands. The Apple II was a huge success and made Apple one of the fastest-growing companies in the world. By 1980, Apple had gone public, and Jobs and Wozniak became millionaires overnight. Chapter 3. The Macintosh Revolution. In the early 1980s, Apple faced competition from companies like IBM, which were making cheaper computers. Jobs knew that Apple needed to innovate to stay ahead. In 1984, Apple introduced the Macintosh, a revolutionary computer that changed the way people use technology. The Macintosh was the first computer to use a mouse, which made it much easier to navigate. It also had a graphical user interface, which made it more user-friendly than other computers at the time. To introduce the Macintosh, Apple created one of the most famous commercials in history. It was called 1984 and was inspired by George Orwell's novel 1984. The commercial showed a young woman destroying a giant screen that represented Big Brother, symbolizing Apple's fight against conformity. The commercial aired during the Super Bowl and was a huge success, making the Macintosh one of the most talked-about products of the year. Chapter 4. Steve Jobs leaves Apple and founds Pixar. Despite the success of the Macintosh, Apple faced internal conflicts. Steve Jobs was known for his strong personality and high expectations, which sometimes clashed with other executives. In 1985, Jobs was forced out of Apple by the company's board of directors. This was a difficult time for Jobs, but he didn't give up. Instead, he channeled his energy into new ventures. One of these ventures was Next, a company Jobs founded to create advanced computers for education and business. Next computers were powerful and innovative, but they were expensive and didn't sell well. However, the software developed by Next would later become the foundation for Apple's future operating systems. But Jobs didn't stop there. In 1986, he bought a small computer graphics division from Lucasfilm, the company behind Star Wars. This division would later become Pixar, the animation studio that revolutionized the film industry. At first, Pixar struggled to find its footing. The company initially focused on selling high-end computers and software, but it wasn't very successful. However, Jobs believed in the potential of Pixar's animation technology and continued to invest in the company. In 1995, Pixar released its first feature film, Toy Story, in partnership with Disney. Toy Story was the first-ever full-length computer-animated movie, and it was a massive success. The film won critical acclaim, earned over $373 million at the box office, and changed the animation industry forever. Pixar went on to create other iconic films like Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, and Inside Out, becoming one of the most beloved animation studios in the world. Jobs' investment in Pixar not only saved the company but also made him a billionaire when Pixar went public in 1995. Meanwhile, Apple struggled without Jobs. The company released new products, but none of them were as successful as the Macintosh. By the mid-1990s, Apple was in trouble, and many people thought the company might go out of business. But as we'll see in the next chapter, Jobs' story with Apple was far from over. Chapter 5. The Return of Steve Jobs. In 1996, Apple bought Next, and Steve Jobs returned to the company he had founded. Jobs immediately began making changes to turn Apple around. He simplified the product line, focusing on just a few key products. He also introduced a new advertising campaign called Think Different, which celebrated creative thinkers like Albert Einstein, Martin Luther King Jr., and Pablo Picasso. The campaign reminded people that Apple was a company for innovators and dreamers. In 1998, Apple introduced the iMac, a colorful, all-in-one computer that was designed to be simple and fun to use. The iMac was a huge success and helped Apple regain its place as a leader in the tech industry. Chapter 6. The iPod, iPhone, and iPad, changing the world. In the early 2000s, Apple began to expand beyond computers. The company had already revolutionized the music industry with the iPod, but Steve Jobs had an even bigger vision. He wanted to create a device that combined a phone, a music player, and an internet browser into one. This vision would eventually lead to the creation of the iPhone, a device that changed the way we communicate, work, and live. The idea for the iPhone began in 2004, when Apple started a secret project called Project Purple. Jobs wanted to create a phone that was not only functional but also beautiful and easy to use. At the time, most phones had physical keyboards and small screens, but Jobs believed that a touchscreen could replace both. He wanted a device that felt like magic in your hands. Developing the iPhone was not easy. Apple had to create new technologies, like a multi-touch screen that could recognize multiple fingers at once. They also had to design a new operating system, which would later become iOS. The team worked tirelessly, often staying late into the night to solve problems and perfect the design. Jobs was deeply involved in every detail, from the shape of the phone to the way the icons looked on the screen. Finally, in January 2007, Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone at the Macworld conference in San Francisco. The audience was amazed as Jobs demonstrated how the iPhone could make calls, play music, browse the internet, and even zoom in on photos with just a pinch of the fingers. He called it a revolutionary product that would change the world. And he was right. When the iPhone was released in June 2007, it sold out almost immediately. People lined up for hours outside Apple stores to get their hands on the new device. The iPhone was not just a phone. It was a mini computer that fit in your pocket. It introduced features like visual voicemail, which allowed users to see a list of their messages and choose which ones to listen to, and Safari, a mobile web browser that made it easy to surf the internet on the go. But the iPhone's impact went beyond its features. It created a whole new industry, the app economy. In 2008, Apple launched the App Store, a platform where developers could create and sell apps for the iPhone. Suddenly, people could download apps for everything, from games and social media to fitness and productivity tools. Today, the App Store has over 2 million apps and has created millions of jobs for developers around the world. In 2010, Apple introduced the iPad, a tablet computer that was designed for browsing the web, reading books, and watching videos. The iPad created a whole new category of devices and became a bestseller. Like the iPhone, the iPad has continued to evolve, with features like the Apple Pencil and Magic Keyboard making it a powerful tool for creativity and productivity. Chapter 7. Apple Today, a Legacy of Innovation. Today, Apple is one of the most valuable companies in the world. The company continues to innovate with products like the Apple Watch, which can track your health, and the AirPods wireless earbuds that make it easy to listen to music on the go. Apple is also working on new technologies like augmented reality and self-driving cars. But Apple isn't just about making products. It's also about making a difference. The company is committed to using renewable energy and reducing its environmental impact. It also supports education through programs like Everyone Can Code, which teaches students how to program. Chapter 8. What we can learn from Apple's story. So, what can we learn from the story of Apple? First, never be afraid to dream big. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started with nothing but a dream, and they built one of the most successful companies in the world. Second, always strive for excellence. Apple products are famous because they are designed with care and attention to detail. Finally, don't be afraid to take risks. Apple was the first to create the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad, and each of these products changed the world. Apple's story is an inspiration to us all. It shows that with hard work, creativity, and determination, anything is possible. So, the next time you use an Apple product, remember the people behind the brand: Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and all the innovators who made it possible. I hope you enjoyed learning English through stories and picked up some new words and phrases along the way. The vocabulary is in the description below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to your channel for more stories like this. Also, let us know in the comments what other stories you like to hear about. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.